This is Twit.
Let's start with a conversation about AI. You know, when Steven Spielberg took that movie over after Stanley Kubrick died. No, wait, not that one. The actual one. Apple. Big.
Sorry, no.
Yes, Andy Ihnatko. This is all about you, Andy. Surprise, this episode. No.
It usually is. If it isn't, I usually make it about me. That's what listeners love.
Big Mark Gurman scoop this week, which I think, thumbs up to Mark for doing this. Apple talking to Google about licensing Gemini for use in iOS 18 for generative AI. And I think I'm very interested in what all of you have to think about this. I took a journey, like as I read it, I sort of took a journey that started with, oh, Apple is desperate because they're behind, and ended with, actually, does Apple need to build its own LLM, or is it better off using a partner for that sort of thing? I'm curious what all of you think about this news that Apple and Google are talking. Again, it's just a report from Mark that they're talking about Google's Gemini being the backing for some of Apple's AI features in iOS 18.
I think that in some cases that saying, in the same way that we use Google search, there is also, in addition to Google's doing a lot more work and probably ahead of Apple, there's also the case of, we tell you it's by Gemini or by Google, and if something goes wrong, it's Google's fault, not Apple's fault. Because I think that Apple's self-correction process makes it really hard for AI to work, because they have a very high threshold for needing, very low threshold for risk, like they just really don't want to have it telling somebody to do something that's horrible, having a third party tell them to do it on the platform when it's generally a trusted friend. And if it happens, well, Google needs to work on that a little bit more so than if Apple did it themselves. I think that self-correction process that Apple has is really going to hold them back. And I think we see that with Siri all the time, that they just, now I do think that the other thing to look at is there's been rumors that they've talked about obviously with OpenAI as well. It's not necessarily all or one either. They could build, other companies are building federated solutions that are, going and getting your answer from a lot of different sources and then bringing those back together to give you something that might be more accurate or at least less inaccurate that's there. So I think that they could be using all of the above as well as just working with Google. And I do think that there are the rumors that are connected to also that Apple could be building something into the iPhone 16 that does a lot of the work on site. So I think that there's a whole lot of, there's a gray area here. It doesn't sound like it's a black and white thing, and it's still a rumor, so it's all gray. But I think that there's a gradient here where Apple does everything on the computer to Google does everything.
Yeah, no, it's just that Apple has a huge problem. Like, if they really do want to compete with anybody in AI, if they really want to take advantage of what everybody wants AI to provide, the best step for them to do next is to have 10 years ago started investing $1 billion a year in artificial intelligence. And unfortunately, we don't have any rumors about a flux capacitor having been a part of the Apple Car project, so they can't go back in time. So they have to hook up and get the technology people who have been working that way. And Google really is nearly at the top of the tree, or joining the top of the tree with a couple of the people here. 10 years ago, when Apple was gung-ho on VR and gung-ho on the Apple Car, Google was Sundar Pichai was at keynote saying, we are kind of redefining the company as we are an AI-based company, just as in 2006 we had to reorganize all of our strategies based on mobile computing. Today we're reorganizing our future strategies based on AI. And this isn't something that Apple can do something very, very simple very quickly, but they need to do something more than autocomplete, auto-summarize, auto-transcribe. And the problem with that is that it's not just a case of getting the right brain power and getting the right code together. They also need a hell of a lot of infrastructure to do that. OpenAI can rely on a partnership with Microsoft, so they have Microsoft Azure cloud computing servers. Google has its own huge network of computing servers to build and to run its LLMs, the ones that don't run on the device. Apple would not be able to build that out in any quick piece of time. And the third problem is that I was in the same boat as you, Jason. Like, as I'm reading this, like I was in bed in the morning, sort of, hey, I'm not really working yet. I'm just going to scroll through some stuff to see what I'm going to be doing, and started like taking notes on thoughts. And one of the first ones was like, I kept thinking about every single sitcom in which the office sitcom in which the manager makes a pitch to the vice president about hey, there's the pitch they're going to make to the company. Hey, here's the big idea we've got for the next ad campaign, or here's what we're going to do for the product rollout. And they've been working on this idea for like months and months and months, and they know they got gold here. And the VP says, that's not really what you're going to present to the CEO. And they say, no, that wasn't the idea. No, we have the real idea is 10 times better than that. And in a month's time, when we present to the CEO, and I feel as though like Tim Cook is like, virtual reality was the thing that they thought they're going to make all their investors and their board and everybody happy with. It. Oh no, AI was going to be the big thing that we're going to be rolling out. And trust me, when you see WWDC, we'll have so many announcements, and they need to have a whole bunch. They need to have a portfolio and a plan in place. So I agree with Alex that it's not necessarily, hey, we're going to, it doesn't sound like an Apple thing to say, we are going to hand off the entire AI part of all of our phone features and all of our desktop features and all of our whatever features to another company. It's enough to have a partnership. Google and Apple have worked very well in partnership before. They are very simpatico in so many ways. But if all they do is come up with something that will get them through the next year to make everybody kind of relax a little bit and think that, no, we haven't totally forgotten about this. No, we're not just doing AI as a way to touch up your photos automatically. We are going to be the company that the next time you get an iPhone, it will be able to screen your calls for you. Our photo editor will be able to do sophisticated erasings and edits. We will be able to take your inbox from Apple Mail and answer a query like, show me all of the work emails that seem to be very, very urgent from the past week, and correctly summarize that. That's the sort of stuff they're going to have to deliver to compete, and that's the sort of stuff that they're going to need a partnership with someone like with Google and Gemini in order to pull that off.
John, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think on balance, I think it is a good idea. I mean, my first reaction was this just isn't going to end well because, Gemini has had some issues in terms of hallucinations and lack of guardrails. And I think if there are conversations going on with Apple, I got to imagine that those guardrails are going to be right at the forefront, because even if they are able to use Google Gemini as the back end for their AI technology and therefore be able to maybe blame any problems on Google, it's still a bad look if that happens on Apple's watch. I do think, and I'm not 100% convinced that just because Apple doesn't talk about AI a lot, that they haven't been working on it. Now, I do kind of share your thought, Andy, that they are behind compared to other companies for sure. But I think they're working on it. But I think the Google thing is a good way to go because they do need the infrastructure. And I don't believe they probably have that. And having a company like Google that already has that built out is going to allow them to take things that can't be done on device and push them out to the cloud to get the answer. And I think that that's a big part of what we're seeing here, is that the iPhone and the technology in it is getting very close to the point where a lot of AI functionality can be brought onto the device. That's certainly being done on some of the newer Macs. It's also being done on the iPhone. It can be done on the iPhone to a degree, but I don't think it's quite there to really do it fully on the devices. And I think that is a really good reason to bring on a partner like Google. And at the end of the day, I think this may be kind of like an Apple Maps situation where, Apple relied on Google Maps for years for the Maps app. And then when they were ready, they actually got pushed a little early, I guess, into their own map data, but they moved on and they did their own. And I kind of expect that that's where we'll see this go maybe 3 to 5 years down the road.
It does feel like this is part of a nutritious breakfast, right? Like it's a, I would not be surprised if in the end, Apple's got a model that maybe runs on your phone and it does a bunch of different stuff, right? And it's been trained to talk to your apps and talk to services that Apple runs and talk to other cloud services. We've talked a lot about Shortcuts has helped build this whole intense model for apps. Like theoretically, a model on your phone could talk to your apps and without, and look up information and do stuff on your phone. And then one thing that a model on your phone could do is talk to a large language model that's in the cloud. And that would actually, John talked about guardrails. That was one of the things that struck me is one way Apple can put its own stamp on some output from an LLM is to have its own model that knows how to use that LLM and knows how to discard things and summarize things and check things. And so it's sort of like, I have no doubt that Apple is going to have like a single product. It may even be just Siri AI, something like that. But I just keep thinking the right way to think about this is not like, oh, Apple's given up and Google's just going to do its AI for it. I think it's more like Apple needs a partner who has this enormous investment in infrastructure because every iPhone user is going to start using this. Who could even do that? It's a very small number of companies. And Apple's not going to just turn it loose. It's going to be for a limited number of queries that are probably controlled by a model that Apple runs that chooses when to talk to it. And I don't know when I started to think about it like that, I was like, okay, they might even have multiple partners, right? They might even take certain queries and give them to, OpenAI and other queries to Google. We don't know because this is a very specific report about Gemini. So it sounds to me, when I think about it that way, I'm like, okay, so it's Apple being Apple, right? They're going to build this kind of like user layer up top, and then they've got a partnership to go out and they can replace it at the drop of a hat with their own or with a different partner. And they can't do it today, so they have to find a partner.
And you could, in a federated environment, there could be a couple different layers, as you said, that can be done there, where Apple interrogates all of the information on your phone with its own LLM. Because there's a lot of times where you're searching for that email with an email with a picture that someone sent you 6 months ago that now you need, and you could say, "Hey, I had an email from this client, and they sent me a photo, and it kind of looked like this." Or, kind of had this, and this. Can you find that for me? And it just pops up, it's personal information. It's also information that you might have you might put a bunch of documents in. One of the things that has been really useful that I'm not using as much, but I have friends that are using a lot, is putting a bunch of documents into an LLM and then being able to just ask real world questions of those documents. And it just comes back and synthesizes that for you. And sometimes those when I say documents, that's like sometimes 40 books. Like take all the text from 40 books, throw them in there. Now I'm just going to ask questions of that book, and I'm going to get all those answers with references of where those came from. And that's, from a study perspective, that's incredibly powerful. And that can all be done on the phone. But then you can go, I need a question about like how would Richard Feynman explain momentum to a fifth grader? So that's a Gemini question or a ChatGPT question that's going to handle. It's not signing the phone. It's kind of making something up. Or I need an image, and it's going to go out to, maybe it goes out to Midjourney. And in those search cases, what Apple can do for the user is anonymize it. So they can they can give it a hash and a different hash every single time, make the request, have it come back. So you have anonymized searches going into the AI, coming back, getting the outside information from the outside providers, whether it's imagery or 3D models or text or video or whatever it is, and keeping it away from the user, or keeping the user's identifying factors away from the service. But then being able to interrogate data on the phone or things that are known that Apple can dump into it. If you look at Stability's got a lot already in it. So, Apple could put a 12 gig file into a new iPhone 16 that's got, a ton of whatever, and do a lot of answers on its own in a really stable way. Yeah. And then interrogate your own stuff, but then protect your privacy again as you interact with all these exterior connections.
Hey, it's Leo Laporte. If you enjoyed this little snippet of our programming, make sure you check out the full Mac Break Weekly. The link is right down there.